we going to have flowers and rainbows? But the truth is, I just sat back to see where I could be of help. And it was all about building trust in the community. So just imagine now, instead of an officer giving you a car seat because your 3-year-old's jumping up and down in the back seat and you don't have one, now this officer can connect you to the social worker who gets you a car seat. And now you don't have a ticket, and now your kid is safe. So doing little things like that of real problem solving and doing it from a law enforcement perspective. But no, it was very challenging to earn that trust and to help them see the benefit. Once they saw it, it was great because, and I'm just going to share something I would always hear is that police officers only get the 15-minute bad climax part of the story. That's it. And it either ends in arrest or it ends in leaving. With the support of a social worker, they were getting to be part of the happy ending. And that not only went far for the trust in the community, but it also went far for the morale of the police officers. So that was challenging. For me personally, is losing clients to homicide. And I have lost many clients, one of which was a 16-year-old girl who I had started originally working with her brother 10 years earlier. And so that's difficult when you can just see that the cycle continues, especially when it ends in death.
So y'all, Gina's a bigger deal than she's letting on. So I'm just gonna tell you, because now that I know who you are, I'm gonna have to call you out a little bit. So Gina was the first social worker hired by KCPD before there was a co-responder program nationally. So Rick Smith was the major at Central Patrol, that's where she was. He went on to become the police chief, but Ricky hired a social worker. We were all going, what's he doing? We thought he was crazy. Yeah. But he was ahead of his time. And it was amazing work that Gina was doing, and you can probably go back, it was 15 years ago maybe?
It hasn't, no,
10?
Yeah, about 10.
Okay.
And it's still there.
Yeah, it's still going on. And this started kind of this trend where we brought social workers in because as police officers, we're not licensed social workers. We're the largest provider of unlicensed mental health care. That's yes, a police officer. But we can bring in specialists like Gina who could go on the calls, or even if she wasn't on the call, they could make referrals to her and she could address needs that the officers couldn't. So thank you. That's nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
All right, Caroline, how about challenges in your area?
Yeah, the challenge I want to share is taking things personally. Kind of similar to what folks have already shared. My first placement as a practitioner was at a transition center, which was a male correctional facility in the West Bottoms. And we were implementing a restorative reentry community, which is kind of an oxymoron to correctional facility. And we were tasked with coming in and training all of the correctional officers in restorative justice principles and conflict resolution, as well as implementing restorative justice with the residents there. So working through trauma healing activities and also conflict resolution. So people didn't like us a whole lot. And it was really hard. I was, a young person at the time and a young woman. So there was like kind of a lot of bias working against me. And when you would walk into the room and all the COs would roll their eyes or looked like they were falling asleep when you were teaching the class, like it can be hard not to take that personally. And then same thing with the residents. When you work with them for 6 to 8 months at a time, you really get to know them on a personal level and a relational level. And then, you read in the paper that, they have relapsed or potentially passed away in the community just weeks after they had been released from the facility. Really, really hard stuff to swallow. And so something that helped me navigate those challenges through lots of tears and lots of venting to my partner was we plant the seeds, we don't grow them. So our job is to just plant the seeds and it's their job to water it.
Really good advice too. You mentioned something, and Gina, you kind of mentioned it as well. When you look around the room, there's a lot of females in here. The criminal justice field is a very male-dominated field. So, Caroline, you hinted on it a little bit, but can you talk about as a female in a male-dominated field, whether it be the clients or the practitioners, how did you navigate that as a female? Some advice to our women in the crowd here.
Just own your stuff. You know what you know. And there's no reason to act like we know it all. There's no reason to go outside of your role. I think, working in like social services, sometimes you can feel like a catch-all, like a task rabbit, like, oh, I could just fix this real quick. I could fix that real quick. It doesn't help you build rapport or relationships. So just get really, really good at what you do and own it, because you have every right to be there as everybody else in the room.
Gina, can you answer that as well?
I would say first that it's a little different because I'm older, and I'm the mother of 4 sons, and I always start with that. So immediately it's just like, oh, she's a mom, we better pay attention. But it just, when she talks about owning, for me, it's just recognizing that the more authentic you are and the more genuine you are and comfortable in your skill set and, the passion that you have to be there, and, but you aren't the expert. That's one thing, like everybody there has something valuable to bring, and recognizing that you're there as a team player. Yeah, I would just kind of set the bar and the standard immediately, and then you won't have a problem.
Lindsay, how about you? How have you navigated that as a female in a male-dominated profession?
So my current agency that I work at, Lenexa, our police chief is female, and we have a relatively large percentage of our police force is female. So where I am now, that's never really been an issue. When I first started, it really is all about establishing those relationships and some of your own personal boundaries up front, because regardless of whether they're men or women, they're going to try to walk all over you and get you to do stuff for them that you don't necessarily need to do. So make sure that you are doing the things that you need to do for your job, but you don't have to be a doormat when they come and try to walk all over you, because they might try. Like I said, that hasn't been an issue where I'm at now, but just trying to show that you know what you're doing, you do your stuff, you work hard at it, and you do it well, and then you'll earn that respect where you're at. I mean, as soon as they can see what you can do, they'll respect you for it.
Yeah, and I think it's really important you pointed out, her chief is Dawn Lehman, who's a good friend of mine. When you have a leader who's female, females can be drawn to that. So now you have a higher percentage of females in your department. I don't have that same blessing, but it's all something. There's a 30 by 30 initiative where police departments are trying to get to 30% female by 2030. I don't think we're going to make it, but when I was in Warrensburg, we had 36 cops and I had 12 females, and I took credit for it. I have no idea what I did, but I think it was because we had more females, and so you could see that. So, ladies, law enforcement is a great field to get into, but no matter what you decide, just understand you're going into a heavily male-dominated field, and don't always push it around, is what I would say.
If you have brothers, then you know how to interact with them.
Yeah, go ahead, Seth. I guess I'm down there.
Yeah, if I may, I would say that my field is a little bit different. So my field in mental health and forensic mental health is predominantly female. There are a lot of really excellent female therapists. Most of my mentors throughout my career have been females, and that has given me a lot of better perspective than had they all been males. A lot of bosses that I've had have also been females. I was the statewide director of the sex offender treatment program for about 8 years, and 22 of the 24 therapists that worked underneath me were female. So it's very heavily dominated in that direction.
Seth, I'm going to come back to you with the next question, and that is, who or what have been the most influential sources of mentorship or guidance in your career, and how can students seek out similar support as they start their professional journey?
So I would say to start, find a mentor that aligns with your values, that aligns with your career aspirations and your goals. There was probably, for the first 15 years of my career, I was the youngest person in the room. And the older people that had experience, that had knowledge, that had been where I was, could really give me a lot of good advice and keep me pointed in the right direction. There's also a saying that if you are the smartest person in the room, you need to find a different room. And that is very true in this field. Surround yourself with people that know your field, that can guide you, that know the politics, that know where the landmines are in whatever field you're going into, because they exist. That know the office politics, that know how to do paperwork in a timely manner, that know how to do all of the little things well. And then find a niche, find a little subsection of whatever field you want to go into and make that your career. There's a lot of advice about following passion. there's an author named Scott Galloway who says, don't follow your passion, follow your talent, and align with people that have similar talents that can really hone that and really explore that further throughout your career.
For me, I talked about Marcan earlier. The Kansas City metro area has a lot of crime analysts, and they are all incredible at what they do. And I have only gotten to the point where I am in my career because of those analysts. As a law enforcement professional, it's hard to grow just on your own. You have to learn from the people that are around you. You have to learn from the people who know different things than you do. Every time I've been successful in an investigation, every time I've successfully promoted, every time I've advanced in my career in any way, is because of that group of analysts who's been there to help support me, to help me find the things I need, to help me find the tools I need, and who have walked me through a lot of those things so I could learn from the time I was a baby analyst up until now. But likewise, in my agencies, I work a lot with investigations, so there's detectives along the way who have helped to form some of those things, to help make sure I'm doing those investigations in the right way, to make sure that when it comes time to court, everything is done properly, everything is done so that we can get that conviction or whatever we need to do to help with that investigation. So finding those people in your agency, but also finding those that are sharing your career path, that, like he said, share your values, share your career goals, can really help you to develop as a person, and they can really help you to move on in your career.
I'm going to stick with what Seth said. The only thing that I would add to that is, once you found that person, go ahead and do a deep dive and really immerse yourself in why are they a good mentor for you. I think about something, and it actually, for the professor back there, we had an intern over the summer for our reentry collective. And she walked in and knew everything. She knew what her dissertation was on, correct? Was that right?
Are you talking about, is it RKU student?
Yes.
She knew what her project focus was, yeah. She had a project she was working on, yeah.
Yeah, so just the idea that she was came prepared, and she took the time to get to know everybody that was part of the collective, and then be a sponge. Just soak up as much information and experience and knowledge as you can.
My biggest mentors have been my professors. And really more in grad school than in undergrad. I'd say there's a lot more attention and intention that's allowed in that space. But really, I was the student who hung out after class and was like, can I please tell you everything I've ever wanted to do? And really, your professors are there to be a sounding board for you. They're there to provide opportunities, and I can't emphasize how integral that was to my development. And my thesis advisors, having folks who are on your team for 6 months to a year while you complete that thesis is really, really valuable.
And I can tell you, we like that. We like talking about our jobs. When we're teaching you all, we like talking about what we do every day. It's fun. We wouldn't be doing it if we didn't think it was fun. And hopefully we're all pretty approachable. Some people tell me I'm not very approachable, but I try to be. But certainly these panels are going to be approachable for you today. The other thing too that you want to make sure you do is take advantage of, how many guys are in Jayhawk Justice? Show of hands. If you're not, get involved in Jayhawk Justice. It's a great program. Professor Bell is the faculty advisor. There's a lot of opportunities for you to explore different areas of the criminal justice system with that group. And it provides you opportunities for mentors, opportunities to meet people who are doing the job every day. But Professor Bell and Professor Campbell are associated with research in the field. They know a lot of people. Professor Whitford used to be a crime analyst, so you can talk to her about crime analysis stuff. And again, Professor Whitford loves to talk about stuff. So you will never have to worry about what to say to her, because she will carry the conversation for you. I mean that in a good way. So that's definitely a good thing. All right, we got another one here. Caroline, can you share a defining moment or project in your career that shaped your professional perspective and fueled your passion for your work?
A defining moment was approaching burnout. So I worked for a nonprofit for the first 3 years of my career as a practitioner. And towards the very end, we had finally launched a project working with survivors of sexual violence, which was really kind of my drive behind getting into restorative justice work was supporting survivors in a more holistic way. And, you know, we were moving through cases and I started to recognize kind of all of these gaps that we had in our program, and that we weren't as trauma informed as we should have been. We didn't have the supports internally, like with our leadership, to do this specific kind of work. And I kept telling myself, like, if you leave, then you're failing the survivors. But I was reaching emotional capacity. And I'll never forget, my therapist said to me at the time, you are of no service to survivors in your own trauma vortex. So I was in this space of feeling, you know, a little bit of like saviorism complex, right? Like I can do it all, I can support everyone. But truly, if you're showing up at 25% every day, you are not of service to the people that are experiencing whatever it is that you're providing. So I took a step back, kind of took a moment to really regroup from that experience, and then started my own practice and have been able to do things in a way that is truly aligned with my values, truly aligned with trauma-informed care, and that is community-based. That doesn't have to report to a system, it doesn't have to report to a grant provider, and so really opened this whole world of opportunity to do things in a way that felt true to myself, but I never would have thought that was going to happen when I was in that space. So really, burnout was the defining moment.
And it's interesting because that's one of the things in law enforcement we started to focus on more is officer wellness. And you know, you all as students, you're much more resilient because you're young, but your wellness is really important too. And so I think that's one of the things. If you have good wellness practices now, keep those up when you get into your professional life, because it's going to be really, really important for you, because you do get in that vortex and you don't realize you're in it. And we have something called secondary trauma, where we see most people will experience 2 to 3 traumatic events in their lifetime. Police officers, it's about 200 to 300 over the course of a career. It's that secondary trauma that we carry around that really screws us up. We have a very high suicide rate. We talk about how we take these perfect physical fitness specimens like Mikey on day one, and by the time they're my age, they look like me. You know, this is what happens. This is your future, Mikey. This is what you're going to look like. But we ruin them because the profession just doesn't, the job does it to you. And so we have to, as a person, take care of ourselves. Really important key point and key takeaways. So, Gina, how about you?
So burnout. I got to a place with the police department, not only the hours that I was working, but like he said, there was nothing held back. And so some of the things that I was experiencing, like showing up at a family's house at 2 o'clock in the morning, where the 13-year-old boy minutes earlier had been sleeping as a bullet hit 2 inches above his head. And so you do get to a place where you're like, I have nothing left to give. And so I too needed to take some time away. And I think for me though, finding like my foundation again is that, you know, I came back into working in violence prevention. I was actually working in Wyandotte County. I love violence prevention. I love my work, but that's not where I want, it's not that I don't want to make a difference there, but that's not where my footing was. And so coming back into this position and being part of our collective or our reentry collective, it's really important to me in finding that footing in the community where we can work in collaboration, because that really is the only place that we're going to get collective impact. So, you know, and I think if you hear what I'm saying, I went from when I was in the police department to now as part of as a collective, I'm feeling my footing much better. And so recognizing that these are team jobs and not putting it all on yourself.
And we are more effective when we work together as a team.
Yes.
Crime's a community problem. It's not a police problem. And I think that's one of the things that I learned early on was they expected me as a 22-year-old kid to go out and fix a problem at 59th and Prospect that no one's been able to fix. But we got smarter. We started realizing we need teams to do this, and it's much more effective that way.
Yes.
So, Lindsay?
Like Caroline and Gina were saying, I think that one of our challenges is violent crime can be really difficult to work in day and day out. And for me, after my son was born. I ended up coming back after he was born, and within 2 weeks, we had a week where we had 3 homicides in that week, and I'm working every one of those homicides, and one of them was an infanticide. And my son was 8 weeks old, and this baby was 6 weeks old. And I think that it was at that time that while we're working on that, we still had so many more homicides after that. But it really became clear to me that how can I be more involved in prevention? How can I be more involved in trying to stop being reactive? We need our detectives, we need our investigations to investigate those things. But if there's things we can be doing as a police department to try to work towards preventing those, it really steered my passion when I moved into the crime analyst unit to focus on those violent criminals, those juveniles committing those crimes, because that's where a lot of it was happening, and finding ways to build some of those partnerships in our police department to work towards fighting that violent crime so that we could have less of that and less of those where we have weeks with 3, 4 homicides happening. And so that really started to push my career into the prevention aspect.
I think, like all of them have said, there are gaps in our system. And sometimes it's about finding where those gaps are and how we can have input into changing some of those. And for me, it was public policy. I do primarily clinical work with individuals charged or convicted of violent crimes, but my main passion is in shaping policy around some of those laws. Some of the laws that we have are really good and effective. Others need to be tweaked a little bit. And I had an instance where I was at a conference and I was actually speaking at an event, and the woman that spoke before me was named Patty Wetterling, and her son Jacob was one that was abducted and killed by a violent offender in the early 90s, and the Jacob Wetterling Act that allowed for registration and community notification of sexual offenders. And Patty's story was so overwhelmingly positive for someone that had experienced that level of tragedy. And she spoke about the need for evidence-informed decisions and evidence-informed policies. And it really sparked an interest in me. And from there, I started joining committees that were focused on restorative justice, that were focused on more evidence-informed decisions regarding sentencing. And it really ignited a passion that I really still have. So getting involved in policy work, joining committees, joining organizations and groups, associations, attending conferences, things like that you can really find a passion for is a good way to go.
Next thing I want to ask you guys is, what's been your biggest surprise in your career path from when you started? What's the thing that surprised you most about each one of your areas?
The level of misinformation that can exist about the population that we work with, the level of myth that exists and how people can so readily believe some of the myths, that sometimes offenders are subhuman. And while these individuals may commit horrible, atrocious crimes and leave a trail of victims a mile long, they are still people. They are still humans. And every human deserves to be loved. Every human deserves compassion and support and empathy. And working in this field with so many unbelievably qualified professionals, it's really nice to see whether it's law enforcement, prosecution, defense, judges, victim advocacy, everybody comes together and coalesces around the fact that we can prevent violent crime. With more education, with more work, we can all accomplish these same goals. To do so, it means we have to confront some of the myths that exist out there.
On a totally different note. For me, one of the things that's been a huge surprise constantly, I do courses for our Citizens Police Academy, and I teach the public about what crime analysis is. And they always think that we are crime scene investigators. And I always tell them, crime analysis, we don't have to go and touch things. We don't have to smell things. We can do it from our office. Another thing that has been a big surprise to me has been the evolution, I guess, of my own priorities in the career. Because I started, like I said, in investigations where we were being reactive. And then I moved into the crime analyst role to be more preventative. But since I've been getting older and working in this field longer, I've really found that our best key to prevention is education, like Seth said earlier. And so I've been able to expand what we do as crime analysts, because I open up courses for the public, for our own law enforcement. So I do a fraud prevention class. That's for elderly. I have one for any age, really, of adult that wants to come. I do an internet safety class. I do that for parents. I do that for K through 12 students, broken up by their age developmental levels. My newest one has been fentanyl awareness. I've had several community organizations who have asked me to come and speak to their groups about the dangers of fentanyl and making sure that our people are aware about that. So it's really been that crime, for me, crime analysis is no longer just about trying to react to those crimes and find those suspects. It's not even just about trying to make sure our patrol is in the right place, but it's about empowering our public. It's about empowering the people, the citizens of our cities, of our communities, so that they know what the real risks are out there and they can do some of those things that they can to protect themselves. If you ever go through an active shooter training, they'll tell you that when you call the police at an active shooter, it's going to take 5 to 6 minutes for officers to arrive. Imagine if you have some of those tools in place so that you don't have to worry about those 5 to 6 minutes because you're already aware of how to prevent some of those things. If you're already aware of some of the steps to take to keep yourself safe. So that's kind of my goal, is that the police department can't be everywhere all the time, but if you guys can know how to keep yourselves and your community safe, then hopefully that makes us all safer.
My biggest surprise was actually working with law enforcement and not realizing not only how many officers truly do care, especially the older they get, because the more experience that they recognize that, you know, his good friend used to say, we're not going to arrest ourselves out of this problem. And so for me, I think the biggest surprise was just really understanding how committed law enforcement is to creating safer communities and how willing they are to open their doors and work with all kinds of community members, not just the citizens, but reentry organizations, you know, domestic violence shelters, and that they do recognize it's a community issue. It isn't a police issue. It never has been. And so just trying to figure out how we collectively as a community can support law enforcement in doing the work.
I would say my biggest surprise is really how open most folks are to restorative justice. I think going into the field and kind of coming from an academic perspective, I really felt like I was going to be met with all this resistance and that all of these myths were going to be rampant about restorative justice, that it's soft on crime, that it doesn't promote accountability. But truly, when you get into the root of things and you're working with folks and saying, hey, what if we had another option, just an option, not the only way, but an option that promotes healing and accountability? Would you like that option? That most people are going to be in favor of just providing that opportunity and accessibility for folks.
All right, last one. This is the best one. You get to give some advice to your 20-year-old self. What would you say to your 20-year-old self, Caroline, if you were sitting out here tonight?
Oh gosh, it gets so much better. I think that a lot of like modern day college students can relate to the grind. Like I'm sure most of us were working, I was working full-time jobs, service industry based, so working my butt off, serving people who weren't always super grateful and nice to serve, and then going to classes at night, and then working unpaid and doing a lot of volunteer roles. That's hard. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't, but it gets so much better and you will see the fruits of your labor.
Gina, how about you?
Not to sound cheesy, but just seriously believe in yourself. Like you can really do anything that you put your mind to, but you have to believe in it and you got to put the work in it.
And I would say, don't be deterred by people telling you no. Just keep trying, keep applying for those jobs, keep working at it, because just because you don't get a job here doesn't mean you're not going to get something over here. And it could end up being the best choice you've made in your life by missing out on this opportunity. So just keep trying and keep working towards those goals. And just remember that you have a community that's there with you to help you along the way.
I would say all of that. And also, don't be afraid of the hard work. this is a really difficult field. Once you find something that you're good at, once you find a niche that you can carve out for yourself, make that the focus of your career. Find mentors and people that you can surround yourself with that have been there, that can guide you and support you along the way. And don't be afraid of the hard work that comes with it.
Yeah, and I'd say, don't be afraid to go through doors that open up for you. I was going to be a doctor, and I found out that after a semester of 1.7 GPA, I wasn't going to get into medical school. So then I was going to teach high school biology. I have a degree in biology, in case you didn't know. And then I was like, I don't want to teach high school kids. So I applied at a couple of police departments. KCPD hired me, and I thought I'll stay there for a couple of years. And here I am 35 years later, and I'm the police chief in Lawrence. So that's kind of cool. But you never know where your role's going to end, so, or going to go. So yeah, it's just go through that door when it opens up. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. You want me to introduce Margaret? Oh, okay. Next we have